The Russians took one pathway inspired by Marx, and we took another pathway inspired by John Stuart Mill and John Locke and the English tradition, I would say, of democracy, and competed for 70 years, and things seem to have worked out better here. But it was a hell of a competition, and there were real differences in opinion at the bottom of it, and those two systems turned into armed camps. And that's not over exactly, you know. I mean, there's the Chinese, although they're a hybrid now between communism and capitalism, and hopefully they're more interested in getting rich than they are in, you know, having a war. Greed is a good motivator, surprisingly enough. It's kind of reliable. But anyways, by 1989 the jig was up. It was obvious that the Soviet system was not functional. There were no consumer goods, that's for sure, even in the main department stores in Moscow, and people just kind of lost faith in the whole project. You know, it became, for a while, I don't know if you know about the show Dallas. Dallas was a soap opera that ran at night, a serial, and it was about these rich Texans who lived, you know, a 1% lifestyle, and it was the most popular show in East Germany. The streets would empty so that people could watch Dallas. Well, when you're sitting in your horrible Soviet architecture flat that, you know, you had to struggle to get with your informing relatives, because 1 out of 3 people in East Germany was an informer, a government informer, and you watch Dallas, you know, there's a little cognitive dissonance occurring, and so it fell apart, and quite peacefully actually. You know, there was a bit of war in Eastern Europe, but it fell apart remarkably peacefully, and so here we are, and we don't know what to do with the pesky Russians, but at least there's no evidence that there are mortal enemies for fundamental reasons of axiomatic presupposition. And things are a lot better in the world, despite what everyone tells you, than they were 40 years ago, and they're so much better than they were 50 years ago that it's absolutely staggering. We've lifted more people out of poverty in the last 15 years that have been lifted out of poverty in the entire history of the world before then. People are gathering economic resources at a rate that even the wildest optimist really couldn't dream of speeding up. So it's not like we're without our problems, but so during that period of time I was obsessed, is a good word, with a question, and the question was, why would human beings produce 2 camps and then produce a massive arsenal of hydrogen bombs? And I don't know what you know about hydrogen bombs, but they have atom bombs for triggers. And you know, that's worth thinking about, because an atom bomb, you know, hey, that's something. But a hydrogen bomb, that's the sun. That's really something. So, and you know, they were at the peak of the Cold War, and this is still true to some degree, there were literally tens of thousands of these weapons aimed at the Soviet Union and at the West, and that was enough to pretty much put an end to everything. And that's a dangerous game, man, you know, and not only because of intent, but also because of the possibility of accidental, just an accident, you know, just a mistake, or just someone who's a little crazier than you might want them to be, you know. And you might think, well, no one would want to bring about the destruction of the world, but that just means you don't know very much about Stalin, because of all the people who lived in the 20th century who had power, Stalin was the most motivated to bring everything to an end. There's some evidence that he was murdered by Khrushchev and his crew, and Khrushchev was the next leader, and if he wasn't murdered, he was at least not provided with medical attention when he was dying. And there is reasonable evidence that he was gearing up to invade Western Europe, and he didn't really care how much destruction would go along with that. I mean, he'd already killed tens of millions of people. He had a lot of practice. He was good at it. It didn't really bother him.